Have you ever wondered what it feels like to live where Earth is just a blue marble below your feet? A place where every sunrise looks like fire on the edge of infinity. Before we start, make sure you hit subscribe, because this is just the beginning of stories that will make space feel closer than ever. Tonight, we're diving into some of the rarest astronaut stories, the quiet, strange, and unforgettable experiences of life aboard the space station. These aren't the big headlines or the flashy moments you see on television. These are the hidden tales, the whispered details astronauts only share when they're back on Earth, and they'll make you see space in a whole new way. So picture this. You're strapped inside a capsule, engines roaring, the world below shrinking fast. Within minutes, you are weightless. The ground disappears, and soon you are floating through the International Space Station, a place that feels like a mix of a science lab, a camping trip, and a spaceship from a sci-fi movie. But living up there is more than just floating around and looking out the window. It's a test of body, of mind, and of spirit. And some of the stories astronauts bring back are so unusual, so rare, they sound almost unbelievable. One astronaut once said, "The first thing that hits you isn't the view, it's the silence." Imagine being inside a metal shell the size of a football field, circling the Earth at 17,000 miles per hour, yet the only sound you hear is the gentle hum of machines. No cars, no birds, no chatter, just a kind of silence that feels heavy, as if the universe is pressing in on you. That silence makes every small sound a creak in the station, the hiss of air filters, even your own breathing feel amplified, almost alive. And then there's the view, the one astronauts never forget. Earth spread out below like a living painting. At night, cities sparkle like constellations. During the day, you see storms swirl across oceans, lightning flashing like strobe lights in the clouds. Some astronauts say they could sit by the window for hours just watching the planet spin, forgetting completely that they're part of the experiment themselves. But here's where it gets stranger. Space does things to your body. Muscles weaken, bones lose density. Even your sense of smell and taste change. Food that once tasted fine on Earth suddenly seems bland, almost dull. That's why astronauts load their meals with hot sauce, not because they love spice, but because in space, it's one of the only flavors that still feels alive. There's also something astronauts call the space smell. It clings to their suits after a spacewalk. Imagine a mix of hot metal, seared steak, and something faintly burnt like ozone. No one knows exactly why space smells that way, but when astronauts describe it, you realize even the emptiness out there has a presence. And then there are the rare, almost mystical moments. Astronauts talk about seeing flashes of light, even when their eyes are closed, tiny streaks darting across their vision like fireflies. These aren't hallucinations. They're cosmic rays, high-energy particles from the universe hitting their retinas. Imagine that. You close your eyes to sleep, and the stars are literally inside your head. But not every rare story is beautiful. Some are eerie. One astronaut once woke up in the middle of the night, drifting in darkness, and felt watched. Of course, there was no one there. Just the creaks and groans of the station, metal expanding and shifting as it moved through extreme temperatures. Still, the feeling was so strong, it stuck with him for years. Another astronaut admitted that the hardest part wasn't the launch or the landing, it was the loneliness. Being so far away, knowing the people you love are just a speck below you. Life aboard the space station is full of these contrasts. Moments of wonder and moments of deep unease. And as we move deeper into these rare astronaut stories, you'll notice a theme space has a way of pulling out truths about human beings that Earth can't pund. It reveals what we're made of. And one of the strangest, rarest astronaut experiences has to do with something most of us take for granted: sleep. Up there, there's no sunrise, no sunset. Astronauts orbit Earth every 90 minutes, which means they see 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets in a single day. Imagine trying to rest when the light keeps coming and going like a cosmic strobe. Some astronauts zip themselves into sleeping bags strapped to the wall, floating like cocoons. Others drift with their arms tucked in, looking like mummies suspended in zero gravity. But here's the twist. Many of them report vivid, almost cinematic dreams. Dreams of flying, dreams of falling, dreams of being back home, but weightless. One even said he dreamt of walking outside the station without a suit, and instead of panic, he felt peace. Almost as if space was welcoming him. It makes you wonder what's real in that moment. You might think living in space is all about science experiments and high-tech controls. But the truth is, much of life aboard the space station is about the little things. The things we take for granted on Earth suddenly become daily puzzles to solve up there. Take something as simple as eating, for example. On Earth, you sit down at a table, grab your fork, and your food stays on the plate. In microgravity, nothing stays put. Every spoonful of soup wants to float away. Every crumb of bread drifts off like tiny satellites in orbit around your head. Astronauts quickly learn that every meal is part science, part strategy. They Velcro their food packets to the table, cut them open with scissors, and carefully squeeze out each bite. Imagine having to chase your peas across the room before they sneak into the air vents. And yet, astronauts say there's something peaceful about it. Eating slowly, carefully, like each bite matters. No rushing, no fast food. Just floating quietly, listening to the hum of the station's life support systems while you try not to lose your dinner to the laws of physics. Water, too, is completely different. On Earth, we pour it into a glass. In space, water forms shimmering floating spheres that bounce gently through the air like crystal marbles. Astronauts drink by gently sucking the water from a special pouch with a straw. Some of them like to play first, letting the bubbles float until they catch one and pull it in like magic. But food and water are just the beginning. Even sleep is an adventure. There's no lying down when you live where there's no up or down. Astronauts zip themselves into sleeping bags attached to the walls, ceiling, or floor. Not that it makes much difference, since in weightlessness, Every direction feels the same. Imagine drifting off to sleep while floating like a ghost, your body completely weightless, your arms rising gently in front of you, your mind hovering between wake and dream. Outside your window, the earth glows blue and white as the station races around it, giving you 16 sunrises and sunsets every single day. Some astronauts say those are the most surreal moments, waking up in the middle of the night, opening the small window near their sleeping bag, and seeing the entire planet silently passing beneath them. Cities glowing like golden constellations, storms swirling like marble paint, oceans dark and endless. You realize how fragile, how small, and how beautiful Earth truly is. But with that beauty comes constant challenges. Life in orbit isn't as easy as floating around and stargazing. Every single thing, eating, sleeping, exercising, even using the bathroom, has to be carefully thought out. Astronauts must keep their bodies strong, because without gravity pulling on their muscles and bones, those muscles and bones begin to weaken. That's why every crew member spends about 2 hours every day exercising with machines designed for space. Treadmills strapped with harnesses, stationary bikes bolted to the floor, resistance machines that mimic weightlifting without actual weights. Imagine trying to run while being held down by elastic bands, your feet never really touching the ground. It's exhausting, but necessary. Without it, walking back on Earth would feel impossible. Even something as simple as washing your hair becomes an experiment. There are no showers in space, so astronauts use rinseless shampoo, basically a special soap that doesn't need water. They squeeze out a glob, rub it into their scalp, and towel it off. It's not glamorous, but it works. And every astronaut learns to laugh at these little quirks, because humor is the best way to survive the oddity of life off the planet. Then, of course, there are the strange noises. The station never sleeps. Fans whir constantly to move air around, otherwise astronauts could end up in little pockets of carbon dioxide, which is dangerous. Pumps rumble, machines click, radios buzz. It's like living inside a giant hummingbird. After a while, the sounds fade into the background, like white noise. Some astronauts say it actually helps them relax, like a cosmic lullaby. But once in a while, there are moments of silence. The kind of silence you can only hear in space. A silence so deep, it feels like it has weight. Looking out the window during one of those moments is enough to make your chest tighten, because you realize out there, just beyond that thin wall of metal, is the infinite void, black, endless, and utterly quiet. A place where no sound travels, no wind blows, no waves crash, just forever. And yet, astronauts return from space saying they've never felt more alive, because it's not just a job, it's not just a science. It's living in a place where every second reminds you how fragile life is and how lucky we are to call Earth home. One of the strangest things astronauts talk about isn't what they see outside the window, it's what they sometimes hear inside the station. The International Space Station is filled with constant mechanical noises, fans, pumps, beeping computers. But every once in a while, astronauts describe hearing sounds that don't have an obvious source. A tapping on the metal wall, like fingers knocking. a faint clicking, almost like someone walking in the modules. Engineers back on Earth usually explain it away as the station adjusting to temperature changes or equipment expanding and contracting. But up there, floating in the quiet, thousands of miles from home, it feels different. Some say it's eerie, like the station itself is alive. Another rare story comes from when astronauts look out at Earth. They see storms the size of entire continents, lightning flashing across clouds like camera bulbs going off. But sometimes they see something else. Strange lights above the Earth. Glowing blue flashes, red streaks shooting upward into space instead of down toward the ground. Scientists call these sprites and elves, strange electrical discharges in the upper atmosphere. But astronauts describe them as magical, like seeing fireworks no one else can ever witness, silent explosions in the sky that last just a second before disappearing. Then there's the so-called space vision problem. After weeks in orbit, some astronauts start noticing that their vision blurs. Reading becomes harder. Things seem slightly out of focus. Doctors believe it's because fluids shift in the body when there's no gravity pushing against the eyes. But astronauts say the strangest part isn't just the blur, it's the way their dreams change. Many astronauts describe their dreams becoming more vivid, more colorful, almost surreal. Some even say they've dreamed of floating outside the station without a suit, drifting among the stars peaceful, not frightening, as if their minds are slowly adjusting to the idea of infinity. And speaking of infinity, there's one thing astronauts almost all agree on. The feeling of looking down at Earth and suddenly feeling like you're outside of time. You see the thin line of the atmosphere glowing faintly blue. You see the blackness of space stretching forever. And for a moment, you feel completely weightless inside your soul, not just your body. Some astronauts call it the overview effect, a sudden shift in perspective where the borders and boundaries of nations fade away, and all you see is one fragile planet, one home for everyone. They say it changes you forever. But space isn't always peaceful. Rarely, but sometimes, astronauts report seeing small flashes of light even with their eyes closed. Imagine that. Lying in your sleeping bag, zipped to the wall, eyes shut, when suddenly a streak of light cuts across your vision. Scientists believe it's cosmic rays, high-energy particles zipping through space and striking the retina. They leave behind quick, ghostly flashes, like shooting stars in your mind. Astronauts get so used to them that they almost become a nightly ritual, like fireflies dancing in the dark. Of course, living in such an environment comes with challenges to the mind. The station is big compared to a house, but compared to Earth, it's tiny. Astronauts sometimes say they feel both free and trapped at the same time. Free because they are floating, looking out at the endless universe. Trapped because, in reality, they're confined to a small habitat where every breath, every sip of water, every bite of food depends on technology. It makes them deeply grateful, but also deeply reflective. And through it all, astronauts keep journals. They write about the little details. The taste of rehydrated strawberries, the sound of Velcro tearing, the way their crewmates laugh at a bad joke floating in zero gravity. They recall the odd moments to the strange knocks, the mysterious flashes, the dreams they can't quite explain. Years later, when they're back on Earth, those journals become treasures. Rare stories that the rest of us can only imagine. Because space isn't just science and numbers. It's human, it's emotional, it's strange. And every astronaut who returns carries with them a story no one else can fully understand. Life aboard the International Space Station isn't all science experiments and serious work. In fact, some of the most unforgettable astronaut stories are about the little human moments, the things that remind you that even in space, people are still just people. Take laughter, for example. You wouldn't expect astronauts to laugh much in such a dangerous high-stakes environment, but they do. A lot. Imagine squeezing mustard onto your tortilla because bread makes too many crumbs in space and watching the blob of mustard suddenly float away. Or picture trying to shave and the tiny bits of shaving cream drift off your razor in little white pearls, chasing each other around the cabin like miniature planets. Astronauts say those silly, everyday moments keep them sane. Without laughter, the weight of space, even in zero gravity, might crush the spirit. Then there are the pranks. Yes, astronauts play pranks on each other, even hundreds of miles above Earth. One astronaut once floated behind a module door, waiting for his crewmate to drift past, and jumped out with a sudden shout. Imagine being startled in a house. Now imagine it in a silent metal spacecraft where every unexpected sound makes your heart skip. They all burst into laughter afterward, but for a split second, that crewmate thought something had gone terribly wrong. Food stories are another favorite. Most meals are freeze-dried, sealed in pouches. But every now and then, a cargo ship delivers bonus food from Earth. Fresh fruit, chocolate, maybe even a pizza kit. Astronauts say that nothing on Earth has ever tasted as good as a fresh apple in orbit. The crisp crunch, the burst of juice, the smell filling the cabin is a reminder of home, of trees and sunlight and air. One astronaut said he actually closed his eyes and almost cried while eating an orange because it felt like Earth had sent him a hug. But not all moments aboard the station are light-hearted. Sometimes astronauts face things that make their stomachs tighten. There was one night when a small alarm went off, the kind of alarm no one wants to hear. A possible ammonia leak. Ammonia is what cools the station, but is also deadly if it leaks into the cabin. The crew instantly put on masks, floated to their safe compartments, and waited for ground control to confirm the readings. For long minutes, the silence was crushing. Finally, the message came. False alarm. The sigh of relief was so heavy, astronauts said it almost felt like gravity came back for a moment. Then there are the spacewalks. Stepping outside the station is the dream of every astronaut and also their greatest fear. The station moves at 5 miles per second, one wrong push, and you could drift away into endless darkness. Astronauts train for years to control every movement, but the first time they open that hatch, it's overwhelming. The Earth is right below you, a spinning globe of clouds and ocean. Above you, nothing but black, stretching forever. Some astronauts describe it as the closest feeling to flying in a dream. Others admit that their first instinct was pure terror, gripping the station so tightly their knuckles turned white inside the gloves. And yet, even in those moments, beauty wins. During a spacewalk, if you pause and just look around, you see things no one on Earth can truly imagine. You might see the green ribbon of the northern lights curling below you like a ghostly river of fire. You might watch lightning storms flicker across entire continents, silent from your vantage point. Or, if you're lucky, you might see the thin line of atmosphere glow as the sun rises a razor-thin shield that's the only thing protecting life on Earth from the void. But there are other sights too, sights that astronauts rarely talk about except in hushed tones. Once in a while, a crew member will spot something strange, a flash of light in the distance, moving in ways no satellite should, a metallic glint that disappears before they can call another crewmate to look. Of course, the official explanations always come back to space debris or reflections. But astronauts know better than most how enormous the universe is, and many admit quietly, off the record, that in the dark of space, they've wondered if someone or something was watching back. When the lights are dimmed and the crew drifts off to sleep, astronauts say the quiet is unlike anything on Earth. It's not silence like in a bedroom, where you still hear a car in the distance or a dog bark down the street. It's an alien silence, broken only by the hum of machinery and the occasional creak of metal. Some astronauts have said they felt as if the station itself was breathing around them. Others said they could almost sense a presence, as if the vast blackness outside wasn't empty at all. It's in those hours, floating in their sleeping bags, that astronauts sometimes realize the real challenge of space isn't the lack of gravity or the technical dangers. It's the confrontation with loneliness. The kind of loneliness where you look out the window and see Earth shining below, but you know you can't go back, not yet. You're there, between worlds, with only your crew and the endless silence. And yet, strangely, many astronauts say that loneliness doesn't crush them. Instead, it transforms them. It makes them grateful. It makes them human in ways they never expected. Because when you're that far from Earth, even the smallest thing a joke, a floating strawberry, a friend's smile becomes priceless. And those moments, more than the signs, more than the danger, are the rare stories that astronauts carry for the rest of their lives. Life on Earth is full of distractions, phones buzzing, cars honking, the constant rhythm of daily life. But in space, there is none of that. And at first, astronauts say it feels almost peaceful, too peaceful. You finish your tasks for the day, you share a quick meal with your crewmates. And then, when the lights dim and everyone drifts into their sleeping bags, silence takes over. You close your eyes, and that's when it begins. The strange thoughts, the questions you've never really asked yourself before. Astronauts have described it as the confrontation with the self. On Earth, you can run from yourself, hide in work, in noise, in routine. But up there, you can't. You are surrounded by blackness, by endless night, by the cold reminder that you are a tiny human floating in an infinite universe. And in that silence, your mind starts whispering. Some astronauts report dreams unlike any they've ever had on Earth. Dreams of floating endlessly away from the station, of being pulled toward a distant light, or of walking on strange worlds with skies that aren't blue. One astronaut admitted he dreamed every night of water oceans, rivers, rain. He said it was as if his body longed for the earth so much that his mind created it for him each night. Another told of hearing voices in his sleep, not his crewmates, not mission control. Voices of people he didn't know, speaking words he couldn't understand. He woke up unsettled, drifting in his sleeping bag, unable to shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, something out there had brushed against his consciousness. Loneliness is another constant visitor. You're surrounded by your crew, yes, but in truth, each person is isolated inside their own mind. Imagine floating in front of the window, looking down at your home, at entire continents glowing in the night. You can see cities sparkle, storms swirling, even the faint outline of mountains. You're so close and yet impossibly far. You can't touch it, can't feel it, can't return. Some astronauts describe this feeling as a beautiful kind of heartbreak. The sight of Earth fills them with wonder, but also with an aching homesickness so deep it hurts. Astronauts often carry little tokens of home to ease this ache. A photo of family tucked inside a pocket, a stuffed toy from a child, a small flag. These objects, though tiny, become lifelines. One astronaut said that looking at a picture of his daughter floating beside his bunk gave him the strength to keep going when the silence became unbearable. Another spoke of playing a favorite song during his free time, letting the sound echo in the cabin, and for a moment he felt like he was back home, surrounded by life. But then there is the overview effect, a moment of psychological transformation that almost every astronaut experiences. It happens the first time they see Earth as a whole, fragile, glowing, suspended in black. From that perspective, borders vanish, nations disappear, conflicts seem meaningless. You realize with a sudden and overwhelming clarity that everyone you've ever known, everyone you've ever loved, lives on that tiny sphere. Astronauts say this realization can be almost spiritual. Some have cried, unable to stop the tears. Others felt a wave of guilt for the wars, the pollution, the suffering that scars the planet. And yet, alongside the sorrow comes awe, a deep, humbling gratitude for life itself. One astronaut put it simply, you don't come back the same, and yet there's a darker side. For some, the overview effect doesn't bring peace, it brings unease. Because once you see Earth as a fragile ball in the void, you can't escape the thought, what else is out here? If life exists on that tiny blue dot, could there be countless other lives scattered across the star? And if so, are they watching us or waiting for us? It's in those moments, staring out into infinity, that astronauts sometimes feel it a sense of being observed, of not being entirely alone in the black. Most dismiss it as imagination, the mind's response to isolation. But a few have confessed they weren't so sure. There are moments aboard the space station when astronauts hear things they cannot explain. And in space, sound shouldn't even travel, at least, not in the way it does on Earth. The hum of the machines, the gentle whoosh of recycled air, those are expected. But what about the metallic knocks? The sudden tapping on the hull? The faint whisper that seems to come from nowhere? Some astronauts have described strange noises that appear when they are alone, as if someone or something is on the other side of the thin metal walls. One cosmonaut admitted that late at night he heard what he swore sounded like footsteps moving across the station's exterior. Slow, measured, heavy. He floated silently in his bunk, frozen, wondering how footsteps could exist where there is no ground, no air, and no one else outside. Then there are the sightings. Through the windows, Earth glows like a jewel, but just beyond, against the darkness, some astronauts have reported flashes of light that don't belong to satellites, meteors, or space debris. One crew member confessed that he once saw what looked like a string of glowing orbs drifting in formation, vanishing the moment he called over a colleague. Another swore that while orbiting over the Pacific, he saw a triangular shadow move against the stars, massive, silent, and gone in an instant. NASA never confirms these sightings publicly. Mission Control usually explains them away. Reflections, space junk, optical illusions. And maybe they are. But astronauts have admitted that there are things you see in space that you cannot unsee. Even inside the station, some encounters are harder to dismiss. One astronaut told a story that still unsettles people today. He was floating through a narrow module, moving from one end of the station to the other. As he passed a window, he saw a reflection, not his own, not his crewmates, but a face. A human face, pale and expressionless, staring back at him. He turned quickly, searching the cabin, but found nothing. The face was gone. He later convinced himself it was a trick of the light, but deep down, he wasn't sure. Others describe feelings, not sights. A sudden chill, as though someone is floating just behind them. A tingling in the back of the neck. That primal human instinct that says, you are not alone. And perhaps the strangest phenomenon of all, the so-called space flashes. Many astronauts have reported bursts of light that appear even when their eyes are closed. Tiny sparks, like fireworks behind the eyelids, sometimes so vivid they wake them from sleep. Scientists say this is cosmic radiation hitting the retinas. But some astronauts believe otherwise. They describe it less like random sparks and more like patterns, shapes, a language almost, trying to reach them. The truth is, space is still full of unknowns. The human mind isn't built for such silence, such isolation, such exposure to the infinite. Maybe the noises, the faces, the lights, maybe they are tricks of a mind under pressure. Or maybe, just maybe, they are the first hints that we are not as alone as we think. There is something about space that invites secrets. Astronauts live under strict protocols, and their communications with Earth are carefully monitored. But over the years, little fragments of private conversations, unguarded admissions, and off-the-record remarks have slipped out. One of the most famous whispers comes from the Apollo missions. During a moment of radio silence, a pair of astronauts allegedly reported strange music drifting through their headsets. A soft, high-pitched sound like flutes or whistles that faded in and out as they orbited the far side of the moon. They didn't tell Mission Control at first. They feared being grounded, labeled unfit, or even laughed at. But when transcripts leaked decades later, the world couldn't stop asking, what music plays in the place where there is no air, no wind, no life? Then there are the shadowy lights. Many astronauts, both American and Russian, have privately admitted to seeing what they describe as vehicles moving in ways no known craft can move, zigzagging against the stars, accelerating faster than physics should allow, and vanishing without a trace. One astronaut, speaking years after retirement, swore that NASA had footage locked away showing objects following the space shuttle in orbit. His words, "If the public saw what we saw, they'd never sleep the same way again." There are also the odd malfunctions. Missions where instruments failed for no apparent reason, as though something or someone was interfering. Astronauts have reported radios suddenly buzzing with garbled voices that didn't come from Houston or Moscow. A few even swore they heard their own names whispered back to them. The official record dismisses these events as static, but those who were up there, they are not so sure. And then there are the stories that NASA never puts on record, quiet conversations astronauts have with their families years later. A few admit that sometimes, while staring out into the void, they felt watched, not by Earth, not by the station, but by something vast, silent, and intelligent out there, in the endless night. Some believe that humanity is already being observed, that our first steps into space were not unnoticed, that perhaps we were being studied, measured, even tested. After all, if the universe is as large as scientists believe, is it really possible we are the only ones drifting through it? It's easy to dismiss these accounts as imagination, stress, or fatigue. And maybe that's exactly what they are. But then you hear the conviction in the astronauts' voices, men and women trained to remain calm, logical, and precise. And you realize these are not ordinary people mistaking shadows for ghosts. These are explorers on the edge of human experience, speaking of things they cannot explain. The biggest question remains, what haven't they told us yet? What secrets remain locked inside mission logs, hidden behind classified files, sealed away so the public never knows? Perhaps the answer is out there in the silence of space, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Some of the most unsettling astronaut stories aren't found in the official mission reports. They're buried in half-erased tapes, classified transcripts, and whispers from retired engineers who say, not everything was meant for the public. Back in the early days of space exploration, communication between spacecraft and mission control wasn't as smooth as it is today. Recordings were made on magnetic tapes, and some of those tapes mysteriously disappeared. One such recording was from Apollo 11. While the world heard Neil Armstrong's famous words, "One small step for man," there were reports of a 2-minute gap in transmission. 2 minutes where Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin allegedly described something large watching them from the edge of the crater. The story was dismissed for years as conspiracy talk. Yet, several NASA insiders later admitted there was indeed a gap, and whatever was said in that silence has never been officially released. Then there's the case of the Soviet cosmonauts. In the 1962nd, amateur radio operators claimed they intercepted transmissions not meant for public ears. Breathing, heartbeats, distress signals. Some swore they picked up voices crying out in Russian, pleading for help, fading into static, as if the spacecraft had been lost forever. Soviet officials denied it, but the so-called lost cosmonauts remain one of space's most enduring mysteries. Did pioneers die out there in silence, erased from history, their stories too inconvenient to admit? Astronauts on the International Space Station have their own stories too. Strange flashes of light that appear inside their eyelids when they close their eyes to sleep. Science explains this as cosmic rays hitting the retina, but astronauts describe it as something else, like being stared at by invisible sparks, as if the universe itself refuses to let them rest. There are also the knocks. Yes, knocks. Several astronauts from different countries across different missions reported hearing what sounded like tapping on the outside of their spacecraft. Imagine sitting hundreds of miles above Earth, sealed in a fragile capsule, knowing there is no air, no wind, no possible way for sound to carry, and yet something is rapping on the hull, as if trying to come in. One Chinese astronaut famously described it, saying he could never forget the sound. To this day, no one can explain it. And then there are the documents labeled confidential. Declassified years later, they sometimes reveal small, strange notes, observations of unidentified objects, technical malfunctions described as unexplainable, or even recommendations that certain transcripts remain sealed. The deeper you dig, the more you realize for every official story told, there is another kept hidden. What are they protecting us from? Panic? Fear? Or the truth that space may not be as empty or as silent as we think? The unsettling part is that astronauts are trained observers. They don't mistake stars for ships or static for voices. They are disciplined, precise, logical, and yet, time and time again, they describe things that break the rules of science as we know them. It makes you wonder, how much more is sitting in a vault, never to see the light of day? What have astronauts seen, heard, or felt that they took with them to the grave? Maybe the silence of space isn't silence at all. Maybe it's filled with whispers, and only those who dared to go beyond Earth ever truly hear them. When people talk about the beginning of human spaceflight, the story almost always starts with Yuri Gagarin, the smiling young man who, in April 1961, became the first human to orbit the Earth. That's the official version. But there are whispers, darker versions of the story that suggest Gagarin may not have been the first. Some believe there were others before him, cosmonauts who launched into the heavens and never came back. In the late 1952 and early 1962, two Italian brothers, Achille and Giovanni Giudica Cordelia, claimed they were able to eavesdrop on Soviet transmissions using homemade radio equipment. They intercepted voices, distorted, crackling voices from space. One of the most chilling recordings was said to be of a female cosmonaut. She was panicked. Her breathing was heavy, uneven. She described intense heat, then silence. According to the brothers, her final words were desperate, asking if she was going to crash. The Soviet Union never admitted such a mission took place. If true, it would mean there were human beings who went into space, erased from history. Lost cosmonauts whose names were never written down, whose families were told to remain silent, whose bodies were left drifting somewhere beyond the Earth. It makes you think, how many stories have been buried like this? How many attempts failed, with no cameras rolling, no parades waiting, no history books acknowledging their sacrifice? Some researchers argue the recordings were hoaxes. But even skeptics admit one thing. The Soviet Union was obsessed with secrecy. Failed missions weren't announced. Rockets that exploded on the launch pad were quietly covered up. And when a government is that careful about what it reveals, it leaves the door open for terrifying possibilities. Now, shift your mind from the shadows of the Cold War to the modern day aboard the International Space Station. A place of science, cooperation, and wonder, but also a place where strange things happen that astronauts rarely talk about publicly. There are stories of phantom sounds, not just the knocks on the hull, but murmurs, faint voices that astronauts swear they heard when they were alone in their modules. NASA explains them away as auditory illusions, the mind playing tricks under stress. But astronauts, serious, professional astronauts, insist that sometimes the voices don't sound random at all. They sound like they're calling their names. Then there are the lights. Astronauts often report seeing bursts of brightness, like camera flashes, even with their eyes closed. Officially, this is blamed on cosmic rays. But a few astronauts describe the lights as patterns, as though something intelligent was behind them. One said it felt like being inside a storm of signals too complex to understand. And then there are the shadows. On multiple missions, astronauts have said they saw shapes moving outside the station. Not debris, not satellites, but something that looked like a figure, watching, moving with purpose. Every time, Mission Control explained it away as space junk or reflections. Yet the astronauts themselves, trained to remain calm and logical, admitted quietly in interviews that what they saw didn't move like any piece of debris they had ever tracked. One Russian cosmonaut, years after his retirement, confessed that during his time on the ISS, he would sometimes wake up with the overwhelming sensation that someone was floating just above him, staring down. He never spoke of it while in service. He didn't want to be grounded, but the fear stayed with him long after he returned to Earth. These are the stories that rarely make headlines. Stories buried under layers of official reports, stripped away by technical explanations, reduced to misunderstandings. But the astronauts who lived them, they don't forget. It's almost as if the farther humans reach into space, the more something or someone is reaching back. Imagine living inside a narrow tube hundreds of miles above Earth. For weeks, even months, you never feel fresh air. You never touch soil, grass, or running water. Every wall around you is lined with switches, buttons, wires, and glowing lights. The constant hum of life support systems fills your ears day and night. And outside the windows, only darkness. Endless, unbroken darkness. It's no surprise that astronauts have admitted sometimes in hushed tones that space can change the mind. NASA has a name for it, Space Adaptation Syndrome. At first, it sounds harmless headaches, nausea, disorientation. But the longer astronauts stay in orbit, the stranger the symptoms can become. There are stories of astronauts becoming deeply paranoid, convinced that something was following the station. Others reported sudden waves of crushing sadness, as if an invisible weight pressed down on their chest, even while floating weightless. And then there are the hallucinations. One American astronaut confessed that he often heard a faint music, soft, distant, like a choir humming through the metal walls of the spacecraft. At first, he thought it was just the machines, but the sound grew sharper, more distinct, almost like voices trying to sing in harmony. He never reported it officially. He feared it would end his career. A Russian cosmonaut described waking in the middle of a sleep cycle to see a bright figure at the far end of his module. It looked human, glowing faintly, just floating there as though waiting. When he blinked, it was gone. The next night he saw it again, but closer. By the third time, he refused to close his eyes. When asked about it years later, he said quietly, "It was either a dream or something that followed me into my mind." Psychologists have long debated whether these experiences are purely biological. Lack of natural light, isolation, and cosmic radiation can all affect the brain in ways we don't fully understand. Yet, some astronauts insist that the hallucinations felt too real, too vivid, to be simple tricks of the mind. In the 1982nd, a story leaked about a crew member aboard a Soviet space station who suffered a complete breakdown. After weeks of tension, he became convinced that his crewmates were not who they appeared to be. He accused them of being imposters, of wearing faces that didn't belong to them. For safety, he had to be restrained until the mission ended. The Soviet Union never officially acknowledged the incident, but those close to the program whispered that it nearly ended in tragedy. Even NASA has had its scares. During long-duration missions, astronauts were monitored constantly for signs of depression, anxiety, or psychosis. One admitted that he began speaking to the station itself, as though the walls were alive, listening. He said it comforted him until the night he swore the station spoke back. The idea of space madness became something of a taboo, a phrase whispered but rarely spoken in press conferences. Yet astronauts are human beings, and humans are not built for such alien conditions. Prolonged isolation, the endless silence, the crushing awareness that outside those thin walls is only death, it all adds up. And sometimes it breaks the mind. But here's the most unsettling part. What if these breakdowns aren't breakdowns at all? What if, instead of the brain misfiring, astronauts are perceiving something real? Something most of us can't sense down here on Earth? Could it be that isolation strips away the noise of our busy world, leaving the human mind open to something greater? Something we're not supposed to see? Because if every astronaut who's heard voices, seen figures, or felt watched was simply losing their mind, then why do so many of their stories sound eerily similar? Maybe, just maybe, space madness is not madness at all. Maybe it's a glimpse into the deeper reality of what waits in the darkness. Floating in orbit, surrounded by the silent expanse of space, astronauts have reported events that defy explanation. Perhaps the most unnerving are the sounds faint, melodic, and utterly alien. They call it the space music. During one mission, a crew aboard the ISS reported hearing a sequence of soft harmonic tones through the station's intercom system, even when all communication channels were confirmed silent. The tones didn't resemble any instrument known on Earth. They were ethereal, almost alive, shifting in pitch and texture as if responding to the crew's own thoughts. At first, they assumed it was a technical glitch, yet every attempt to trace its source failed. Some astronauts insist that the music is not random. It comes in patterns, sometimes escalating in complexity. The sound feels almost deliberate, as though space itself is communicating or warning. Over time, the crew began to anticipate the music, speaking of it as if it had its own personality. One astronaut confided in his journal that the tones felt like a reminder that we are not alone, that something vast and intelligent surrounds us. Beyond sound, there are visual anomalies that have puzzled both NASA and independent researchers. Cameras aboard the ISS have captured fleeting shapes, faint shadows moving outside the modules, objects appearing and disappearing faster than the eye can follow, and occasional flashes of light that leave no technical explanation. Some of these phenomena have been linked to cosmic rays hitting camera sensors, yet others remain stubbornly inexplicable, documented by multiple crew members on separate occasions. One particularly strange event occurred during a long-duration mission. The crew observed a small glowing sphere outside the station. It hovered at a consistent distance for several minutes before shooting off at an impossible speed, vanishing from sight. All calculations confirmed that no satellite or debris could match its trajectory. The incident was quietly noted in mission logs, but no public report was ever made. Even the astronauts themselves have contributed to the mystery. While floating outside in EVA suits, they have described feeling sudden, inexplicable temperature changes, as if an invisible presence passed near them. Some report brief moments of vertigo that cannot be explained by zero gravity alone, a sensation of being watched, or an overwhelming awareness of something beyond human perception. NASA officially labels these reports as anomalies, often attributing them to equipment errors, natural phenomena, or psychological effects. But for those aboard the station, the experiences are real. Journals, debriefings, and informal conversations reveal that astronauts quietly share stories of events that do not fit the standard narrative of human space exploration. And it's not just the ISS. Deep space missions, including Apollo flights to the moon, have their own history of strange signals. The far side of the moon, permanently facing away from Earth, is a place of silence, of radio blackout, and yet some Apollo astronauts reported hearing unexplained sounds in the headsets, whispers, or chirps that could not be traced to any equipment. Some of these signals lasted for minutes, long enough to disturb even the most seasoned astronauts. Could these anomalies be simply natural phenomena? Echoes of cosmic radiation interacting with electronics? Possibly. Yet when so many trained, experienced astronauts report similar experiences over decades, the pattern becomes difficult to dismiss. Some theorists suggest that what astronauts experience is an intersection between human perception and the universe's hidden structures, a realm where sound, light, and consciousness interact in ways earthbound science cannot fully measure. Others propose more unsettling possibilities, that there is intelligence, cosmic or otherwise, aware of human exploration, quietly observing. Whatever the cause, one thing is certain. The darkness beyond the station's walls is not empty. It is vast, it is strange, and it continues to hold secrets that our instruments, and perhaps even our minds, are not yet ready to fully understand. Throughout the history of space exploration, there have been whispers of missions that never officially existed, flights that left Earth but never returned, lost cosmonauts erased from public record, their existence shrouded in secrecy. The so-called lost cosmonauts are perhaps the most enduring mystery of human space travel. According to declassified reports and testimonies gathered over decades, several Soviet-era missions may have ended in disaster long before the public ever knew. Some records suggest that cosmonauts reached orbit, communicated briefly, then vanished without a trace. Families were given no explanations, and official logs were later sanitized, leaving only gaps and faint hints of what might have occurred. One chilling account involves a cosmonaut whose radio transmissions were intercepted by amateur listeners. They reported hearing fragmented messages, frantic, whispered tones, sometimes unintelligible, occasionally shouting numbers or names. The last recorded transmission, orderly calm, simply said, "I see them, they are watching." After that, silence. The stories of lost cosmonauts intertwine with strange signals picked up by ground-based observatories. Researchers have occasionally recorded fleeting radio bursts from deep space bursts that do not match known satellites or cosmic phenomena. Some scientists speculate these could be echoes of human voices traveling through space in ways we do not yet understand, or perhaps even signals deliberately sent from places unknown. The International Space Station, too, has its share of unexplained events. Astronauts report equipment failures that occur with impossible precision, almost as if a hidden hand were guiding them. Sometimes, data collected by instruments disappears or shows inexplicable anomalies, readings that suggest objects or energy sources moving in patterns impossible for known physics. One mission described objects crossing the station's orbit in tight formation, moving too quickly and smoothly to be natural debris. Cameras recorded them, but when the footage was analyzed later on Earth, sections of the video were missing or corrupted. Crew members joked nervously that someone doesn't want us to see this, but the unease was palpable. Even daily life aboard the station has peculiarities. Astronauts speak quietly of lights flickering without cause, of shadows passing along walls even when no one is nearby, and of feeling sudden vertigo or a sense of being observed. Some report hearing knocks or taps on walls at impossible intervals, sometimes in rhythm with their own heartbeats. Others describe dreamlike visions, while awake fleeting images of figures or landscapes that vanish when attention focuses on them. Cosmic radiation might explain some of these experiences, affecting the brain in subtle ways, but the consistency and frequency across multiple crews spanning decades and different nations suggests something far more elusive. Could space itself hold consciousness? Or are we brushing against dimensions our instruments cannot measure? Perhaps these are the edges of a reality that human perception cannot yet grasp. Even amateur radio operators have contributed to the lore. People listening to spacebound communications occasionally record strange bursts. Voices, tones, or unidentifiable sounds that defy logical explanation. Some of these transmissions have been traced back to regions near the Moon or orbiting Earth, yet no official spacecraft is known to have emitted them. The line between science and the unknown blurs in these moments. Each anomaly, each strange sound or lost signal reminds us that the universe is vast and indifferent, yet strangely interactive, a place where mysteries accumulate, waiting for human curiosity to reach them, yet always maintaining a sense of distance, secrecy, and quiet suspense. Astronauts often return to Earth with more questions than answers. Some are haunted by what they've seen and heard, others inspired to continue exploring. Their experiences remind us that while technology can measure and map much of the universe, there remain aspects that evade quantification: the unseen, the unheard, the impossible. These stories, whispered through logs, journals, and private interviews, create a tapestry of wonder and unease, a reminder that space is not merely a void, but a canvas of mysteries. Some may be explained one day, but others, like the lost cosmonauts, the strange sounds aboard the ISS, or the untraceable signals from deep space, may remain forever part of the cosmic enigma. As we drift closer to the edge of this narrative, the stories of astronauts aboard the International Space Station leave us with a profound sense of awe and subtle unease. The ISS, orbiting silently above our planet, is both a marvel of human engineering and a fragile outpost in an infinite void. Every day aboard the station is a delicate dance between precision and unpredictability, between the known and the unknown. Astronauts describe the beauty of Earth from above, the swirling oceans, glowing city lights, shifting clouds, a reminder of our small yet extraordinary home. Yet, even amidst this breathtaking view, the shadows of mystery linger. Strange phenomena, inexplicable sounds, and fleeting images continue to test the limits of understanding. Each anomaly becomes a puzzle piece, hinting at the universe's deeper secrets, but never revealing the full picture. The Golden Record, carried aboard spacecraft, the lost cosmonauts whose voices may still echo across space, the signals that defy classification, all of these weave together to create a tapestry of human curiosity and cosmic enigma. We are explorers, not only of space, but of perception itself. The universe, vast beyond imagination, is at once a source of wonder and a reminder of our own humility. In the quiet moments aboard the station, when the hum of machinery blends with the silence of space, astronauts often reflect on their place in the cosmos. Each sunrise over Earth, each twinkling star, each distant galaxy reminds them and us that exploration is not merely about reaching new worlds, but about understanding our own. The vastness above compels reflection, inviting us to imagine, to dream, and to question. And so, the journey of the ISS, its crew, and the hidden stories they carry is far from over. Every orbit, every observation, every subtle anomaly recorded in the logs is a testament to human curiosity, a spark that urges us to keep looking, keep wondering, and keep imagining what lies beyond. The universe is immense, filled with questions that may never be fully answered, yet each question brings us closer to understanding not only the cosmos but ourselves. If you've been captivated by these rare astronaut stories, the strange events aboard the ISS, and the mysteries that still linger in the infinite expanse, don't stop here. Hit that subscribe button, because we've only scratched the surface. There are more hidden cosmic stories, unexplained phenomena, and astronaut secrets waiting to unfold in our next journey through the stars. Stay curious, stay awed, and let the mysteries of space guide your imagination to places beyond comprehension.